What is up, everybody? I am Liam Murphy. Today we have on the winner of Best Ball Mania 1, where our fates were forever intertwined. A fellow 727ian, St. Pedian, if you would, Justin Herzig. Today we're going to be talking about best ball as a whole, fantasy football as a whole. We're going to be talking about the side bet between Justin and I in Best Ball Mania 4. Who knows? Might even say some insightful things. But before we get to all that, how you doing today, Justin?
Doing well. Is it St. Petians? I don't know. I think
St. Pedians, you know?
St. Petian sounds kind of cool. I'm doing well. Crazy news in the crypto world right now. Binance with a big $4 billion fine. Their CEO stepping down.
Oh, wow.
Football's really fun right now. Lots of stuff going on there. I'm in the middle of almost a house move. Been working with the past 3 weeks just to get power to the house. So advice for anyone who's considering building a house: don't. It's God, it's been horrible. But now I'm doing well.
Yeah, I mean, we have some interesting content to get here. Thank you to Patrick, Patrick Donovan, the creator of the BBM4 leaderboard tool you've seen me shown. He simulated our advance rates for the rest of the season, and I'm going to just read what he said he did because it's way above my understanding. I understand a little bit, but real quick, some NFL news that broke. I just want to touch on one. Michael Thomas is on IR for 4 games, so probably better for Rashid Shaheed. A.T. Perry did get some looks. I don't think he was drafted a lot, but I think he got even more work than Shaheed. But good news for Shaheed, bad news for Michael Thomas. Maybe good news for...
I think A.T. Perry will be the direct fill-in. There was a good quote from one of their offensive coaches the other day, and then the guy who does the coach reviews and he'll honest and stuff. But it sounds like A.T. Perry's probably going to be the direct fill-in there, but still good news for the other guys too, just from the overall volume.
Yeah, and the Rams released Henderson, which is just a clear sign that it's pretty wheels up for Kyren Williams' return, who is going to be playing this week against the Arizona Cardinals. Many people, including myself, thought they'd just keep all 3 running backs, but the Rams, I mean, they're trying to make the playoffs here. They just got a key win. They have a very winnable game against the Cardinals, so I expect Royce Freeman to get some work, probably some short yardage stuff, but pretty good sign for Kyren Williams there. And then the Colts, this is not fantasy football too much, but they released Leonard Williams, a star linebacker for them in the past. I think the guy just got injured a lot, unfortunately. And so maybe a contender will sign him. Anything else? Aaron Jones not on IR yet. Doesn't sound like he's going to. Steelers fire their offensive coordinator. Matt Canada is a pretty big one. Maybe that's a better sign for Jaylen Warren. I had seen that the screen game has been a disaster, which is pretty directly. Shaq Leonard, thank you, Omar. I knew I missaid that. I knew I had I had heard that the screen game is pretty directly related to how well you coach in the NFL, and so that's a bad sign for the Steelers. Maybe a good sign for Warren. Who knows there? Any takes on any of that before we jump into the rest, Justin?
I do think Royce Freeman will play a bit more, than what we saw with Kyren at the beginning of the year. The coaches have said they want to kind of give Kyren a little bit of a break. So Kyren should be the 1A there, but I don't think we should expect the crazy volume that it had before, which honestly is a good thing for fantasy owners because that's how he got hurt. And so if we can just give him more of the high value touches, give Royce more of the kind of, hey, occasional early down between the 20s, non-exciting stuff, and that's fine. Shaq Leonard. I think there's some interesting stuff to Shaq Leonard from a personal standpoint as well. But I don't want to.
It would just be really tough to swallow being put in a part-time role when you were previously the face of a franchise. And so I don't think he could swallow that. Jacob Sanderson pointed this out as a Colts fan. I don't think you can swallow that, just accepting that. But you can probably accept that for a team like Buffalo, a team like Dallas, what have you there. Maybe Philly lost Jacoby Dean for the year, or is on IR at least. But anyways, so Justin and I have a $5,000 side bet where 1/3 is advance rate, 2/3 is ROI. We've done some videos on this previously. We've already said that it's probably not perfectly structured for a couple reasons. We're double counting the ROI from the best ball leaderboard into the ROI, which was kind of supposed to capture like how well your team's doing in the playoffs. Which either of us could win $3 million, and so the leaderboard doesn't matter then, I guess. But and then also Justin streamed
28.
28 of his 28 of his draft, so it's not a perfect number 1-to-1 in the future. I think I would really push to like have an equal number. It's just easy, and the average ROI of a Best Ball Mania 4 team, even for a good person, is negative ROI probably. Anything I missed there on the structure of the bet, Justin?
No, but one exciting part about the stream. So I have 4 stream teams that are advancing, but one of those, the second highest of mine, which is like, I don't know, 1500th place, is me, Liam, and Pat's team.
No way.
Yeah.
The one where I was on Pat's channel.
Not that one. That was, I can't imagine that team worked out in any fashion.
Yeah.
No, ours, I can pull it up, but it was
yeah, pull it up.
Dallas,
Can you present, or do I need to give you abilities to?
I can probably just present. We'll be fine. Let me actually, you can find it on the BBMDB. Do that.
Oh yeah, let's do that. It's your top scoring one?
Second highest, I think. I think it's
Nice.
70 it ends in.
Funnily enough, my highest scoring team is also one I streamed. And so no free streamer EV over here between Justin and I.
I think that 1470. There you go. Yep, this is it.
So we built this absolute beauty to the detriment of myself, apparently. No, I guess this one doesn't count. It is a Dak Goff team with Gibbs, RIP J.K. Dobbins, Rashad Wright, Brian Robinson, Jalen Warren, Deuce Vaughn, C.D. Lamb, Amon-Ra, Amari Cooper, Mike Evans, Nico Collins, Curtis Samuel, Slayton, Schultz, Laporta, Everett. Yeah, I mean, a bunch of slam dunks here. Obviously, J.K. Dobbins hurts, but just nailed wide receivers.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, if Dobbins would have been healthy, this team could have really had a chance at kind of finishing high from the regular season standpoint. And then, if this can somehow get to week 17, you got that Detroit-Dallas game, just all sorts of it with what? Gibbs, Lamb, Brown, Laporta.
Hell yeah. And I think the deal was, right, if we make the finals, that's when we get equity of the team. How's it work again?
I know we're splitting it, and I think we said on the stream, basically, I think it was if any team that makes it to the finals, I'll split that with whoever I'm streaming it with. Anything else that's kind of the small change aspects, we'll ignore. I'll go back and watch. But
if you ship the regular season, we're also getting
I think if there's a substantial regular season, I'm willing to say even if it's $1,000 or more, like we'll probably go whatever we said in there. But
maybe we'll just if it's like 1,000, maybe we'll just draft a main event next year together.
That'd be fun
or something. And like I can manage it because I know you don't want to do that. All right.
Very true. Very true.
That is awesome. So yes, shout out to again Patrick Donovan. This tool is pinned under my Discord. The link to join that is in the YouTube description below. Make sure you join my Discord. And Patrick here is, you can follow him on Twitter. You can buy him a beer. I recommend you do that. Shout out to him for giving us this really awesome tool, which again, if you missed my spiel earlier, is just really awesome for researching in the future. It removes all the gatekeeping of studying. It makes a lot of this stuff like actually like searchable, and it's just going to lead to better understanding of best ball as a whole. But
wait till he releases all the sim stuff that he's been doing in the background for us next year. That's when we start getting crazy.
Yeah, so the Sims is not perfect, as I talked with him, but I asked him to explain it, and I'm just going to read this. So he said, I might as well just pull this up. So he said, the basic high-level summary is that it does player-level Monte Carlo simulations for all of the remaining weeks for all the players. I'm using Sleeper's API for projected stats and then using those as the mean to do random draws. For example, Tyreek Hill is projected for 6.15 catches next week. I'll do 10K draws, so he's doing 10K sims. from a random poison distribution with mean 6.15. And each result would be his catches that game. Then I'll take his projected or yards per catch and do random draws for each reception that we just simmed. Sum those draws to get his receiving yards for that game. As far as player outlooks, improving / worsening, those are only accounted for as much as Sleeper accounts for them, which is a little bit important just because one of my highest drafted players is Zach Charbonnet, who's going to be under projected, but also one of my highest drafted players is Jamar Chase, which is like massively over projected just because Sleeper has not adjusted for the injuries to Burrow and Ken Walker perfectly, I think. I understand some of this discussion as a economics major, but I'm not like up to date on Monte Carlo and poison and all that stuff.
And the one thing, like with all the simulations talk that's been going around the industry, the simulators that most sites are using nowadays that have had like a team building it out, they're doing actual like play-by-play simulations where it's basically mocking out what that game could look like. This is doing it on a player results basis, so it doesn't include the correlation aspects in game. But like for what we're looking with, this is a very good, interesting kind of I don't know, like. I'm sure it's very solid. It's not perfect, but like none of the simulation stuff is. But like, no, I think this is really, really cool to kind of discuss and look at. It just gives us a nice kind of expected range of outcomes.
Yeah, and I'm assuming Patrick's first run at all this, so I'm sure he would only get better over time. Getting into the results here, this is strictly talking about the advance rate portion. So currently, I'm advancing 34 out of 150 or 23%. And Justin is advancing 37, so 3 teams more for 25%. But again, some of Justin's don't count because they were streamed. I counted my stream ones. I'm just a little bit lazier with it. And so Justin's at 33 out of 122 for 27%. And I assume it's just raw percentage for us, right?
Yeah.
So what it has, and this kind of surprised me because I did think because we're close and I'm catching you and because of some of our exposures, I thought I had a decent chance. I had seen you post it for Dan before, but it has me winning only 5% of the time with a 20% expected advance rate. My best case is I advanced 43 teams. My worst case is I advanced 19 teams. For Justin, it has him winning 93% of the time. Expected advance rate of 25%. Best case 51, worst case 26. Again, this is not including his stream one, so whatever, we'll just shake that out in the wash. And then we tie 2.3% of the time. And what it has here is a bunch of different sims, and it says like this one I won 36-32. This one Justin won. This one Justin won. This one Justin won. And then I also pulled our teams within 50. This might not be perfect. This was me doing this manually. I have 17 teams within 50, which I think is like a difficult but realistic barrier. Justin has 21. And teams within 30, which is even more realistic, I have 12 and Justin has 13. Anything? What do you want to say about this, Justin? And then we also can dive deeper, I think, into where we have leverage on each other.
I think the data point that is missing is what is the gap that you have on the teams that are advancing at risk of missing out.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's where, and what do we have just as we can look at first place teams versus second place teams. I think I'm at like 19 first and 18 second, so fairly balanced there. I'm not sure what yours is, but that's what my guess is for why that kind of win probability is so drastic is while we're not that much different in like the chance of our thirds moving in, I think mine are more secure in their leads right now. And then also minor thing, but like if you were to go like actually within 5 points, I think I tweeted this earlier. I have 5 teams within 5 points, and I think I have like 8 teams within 10 or something. So like those are very close, and that's kind of not being seen here. I agree though. The 93-5 like is definitely a wider when we're doing the 37 versus 34. Like that's wider than I expected. But I think it must just be like you right now, and you did move up a lot of teams this past week. is that hey, this is indicative of what we expect to go going forward? Your teams are actually running hot and like they're healthy and that's going well for you? Or is it's probably a combination. Okay, this week you ran good. A lot of your teams that were on the line have moved into the expected advance rate. Your overall lead might be on average 10, 15 points less or something to the third. And yeah.
We can look into the exposures, but some of the players I think are just trending up, like Jalen Warren, Zach Charbonnet obviously benefited from an injury. And then some of the guys got some lucky touchdowns, like Darius Slayton, who I think even got hurt, got a touchdown. Even Christian Watson got a touchdown.
Yeah.
So like it's a combo. I would also say that like me personally, more than the average user, I would say I don't optimize for advancing, and especially my early teams. Like I'll build some weird teams because I'm trying to win the tournament. I'm not trying to advance a team. Like you're going to advance teams if you hit some league winners, right? Like if you hit Mostert, your team's going to advance, right? Is my take on it. And not as many people are going to be doing some weird structures of teams, which, for example, like if you just build a 0 running back team, I think is a really easy example to understand. Sometimes that 0 running back team is going to land on Jalen Warren and Devon Achane and Mostert and Kyren Williams. And other times you're going to land on Zamir White and J.K. Dobbins as an anchor and pick, and Damian Harris and any other bust you want, Rashad Penny. So that's some of it. And I also think I probably have some more zeros than you. And then what I definitely have, which is probably being captured in this, is a ton of exposure to some buys upcoming, but so do you. So let's look at that.
Two notes real quick that you were going on. One is we forgot to mention Savon Ahmed hits the IR. So little bump there for Jeff Wilson, Raheem Mostert, maybe Devon Achane if he can get healthy. And then the Charbonnet thing, like his usage has been great. The timing of this injury, though, is so rough. The upcoming schedule for him is San Francisco, at Dallas, home San Francisco, and then even Philly, and then at Tennessee, and then Pittsburgh. Like, it is a tough. Now, I think Walker will probably be back by like week 14 or 15 because it sounds like it's not going to be an IR. So then we expect he'll come back in week 3 or 4. But like, I mean, I'm overweight on Charbonnet only by a little. You're obviously substantially overweight, but like, it's just tough when it's like, hey, this is what you're hoping for. A late injury to Kenneth Walker, Charbonnet getting the usage, getting the positive, and then holy crap, that schedule.
And I mean, he's probably not only to mention the schedule, but you also have the Geno questions, which could just tank the offense. And I mean, to me in PPR, like he's pretty locked and loaded there. He's going to get a lot of probably targets and catches. In half point, he's going to need to fall into the end zone. And it just is what it is there. So let's move over. Justin pulled where we have leverage on each other. I added whether the players have had a buy or not. And so we have my exposure. We have Justin's exposure. We have the delta. I appreciate Justin choosing blue for the good team and red for the bad guys. That's very on point for this stream. Thank you, Justin. So let's just go through some of this. So obviously, some of my top exposure guys have not had their buys yet, which will hurt a little bit. I also have, obviously, I'm going to have huge leverage on almost anyone with Kincaid, when you have 50% of a player, which again, like, would I have 50% in the 5-5-5? If I truly felt the player was like several rounds undervalued, maybe, but I'm willing to risk, like, obviously if Kincaid goes down to injury, it is what it is. Or if he's not good, it is what it is. But it's really hard to win BBM4. So I'm trying to give myself the easiest chance to do it. Obviously, I'm not always right, as you can see to some of my exposures. Shout out Rashad Penny, shout out Isaiah Hodgins and whatnot here. So I guess we'll just like go through some of these exposures. We'll look at me, and then we'll scroll down and look at you. You also pulled you versus Dan, where you have a much bigger side bet of $50,000. So yeah, I mean, you can just see some of the exposures here. Me on Kincaid, Gabe Davis, and Gabe Davis is what it is, right? Like I think he's hurt a little bit by the addition of Kincaid, but he'll still probably have a week or two. Hawkinson is in a pretty good spot here. Why were you so out on Hawkinson? I guess we'll talk through some of our thoughts in the preseason too.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. It's interesting. On DraftKings, I was pretty high on him, and actually, I think a little over expectation. For me, with the FanDuel side of things, I think just where he was kind of going. I think what is ADP, because I did have a decent amount of Cousins. I got a lot of Jefferson, but I think it was just a
Yeah,
little
you
too
leveraged off Hawkinson with the
yeah.
Jefferson and Addison.
Right. So like it's interesting. I don't have like the clearest answer for why I was so low on him from a ownership wise, because I have a decent amount of Cousins, a lot of Jefferson, a lot of Addison, a lot of Ty Chandler. I think it was just like from a touchdown standpoint, a lot of mouths to feed, and just wasn't but like it's not something like I thought I was taking as big of a stand as I ended up on. He also got steamed. I think this is actually what it probably came down to is he got steamed pretty hard in the last like month or
No,
so.
he got reverse steamed actually because he opened as a 3-4 turn, and I was taking him at the 3-4 turn, and then he went down to the 4-5, and even in the fifth he went a full dip to the 5-6, and that's where I was like, I mean, I was taking this guy at the 3-4. I got to like hold to my take someone, take him at the. It wasn't comfortable that he was like falling down boards. Now we should mention, obviously, he ran good with the Jefferson injury. Like, is he doing as good without Jefferson? Probably not. And for a half point PPR, I don't even disagree with the fade somewhat. Like my logic of taking him was, it's an offense I want. It's elite tight end who I thought could like vie for tight end one overall, especially with Kelsey's age, and like Ravens passing volume concerns. And I thought he was very live to outscore the wide receivers going around him, guys like Drake London, even Christian Kirk, who I liked, etc. Like I thought he could score on par with those guys. But the question is, how much should we value the fact you have to start 3 wide receivers versus 1 tight end? And I don't know. That's a complicated question to me.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think it's all valid. I was on par with Travis Kelsey. I was a little overweight on Mark Andrews. And then a lot of my tight end, I think it probably was just a more macro. Like I've got very, very little, almost zero Darren Waller, very little George Kittle, no Kyle Pitts, a decent amount of Dallas Goedert because I'm very high on Jalen Hurts. But I think so. That's why I was just like, hey, I really want to take these other players in that range. But yeah, like on DraftKings, I thought TJ Hawkinson was just such a better play from a PPR standpoint.
Yeah, and I mean you're not wrong there. And I mean I'm with you where like I'm not like sweating my exposures in BBM4 every week or anything and being like, "Oh no, like for example, like Brian Robinson, you have we're going to look at that in a bit, but you have like 18% and I only have 9%, but in the 555 I have way more Brian Robinson, and I think it's just like when I drafted led to a lot of that.
Yeah, I could see that.
So
He
going
was a little
through,
cheap.
like
He was cheaper on DK too, because people were like, "Oh, he can't catch passes.
yeah.
He doesn't have like Antonio Gibson was going like a round earlier in DraftKings." Yeah,
Yeah, and I mean, when we drafted our teams is going to steer a lot of our exposure. For example, I probably drafted more early teams than you, and that's when Gibson was like, like a bunch of the guys I have heavy exposure to, Warren and Gibson, like they were way cheaper, and then they got steamed up, and I got off some of them. Calvin Ridley, you were also out on. Jameson Williams. Kyron, I'm not going to fault you there. That's just like a late round dart. I obviously didn't see as good of a season as he's doing there. Tony Pollard, it's pretty much just like I have Pollard and you have Devontae Adams there. So like that's our leverage on each other.
So I think as well for this Pollard and the Ridley, I think were a benefit of you drafting early where I didn't. My first draft that counted for this was the July 16th, like whenever the BBM, the Pat Kerrane day, like he won the previous year. And
Okay.
then
So pretty late.
pretty late, and then I still went very slow. And then I'd say almost all of mine were in August because I felt that that's where I had the greatest edge. Not counting I was streaming throughout the summer, but like literally just those.
Yeah.
And so what that led to is Tony Pollard and Calvin Ridley, where I knew that they were early on going early third, late second for Pollard, and like late third, mid fourth, late fourth for Ridley. And by the time I was doing most of my drafting, they had both moved up. Ridley, like maybe even 2 rounds, Pollard around. And so it was kind of a by result of, because I wasn't drafting early, I don't want to get teams where I'm already a round behind these guys. So I still got some Pollard, but if I was drafting at the beginning of the summer, I think I would have been a lot higher on Pollard because I did like him as an early third rounder. Not so much as an early second.
I would promise most of my Tony Pollard is not 2-3 turn. A lot of my Tony Pollard is 1-2 turn, just believing in the talent. Same with Ridley. I chased him up. Okay. If I was strictly trying to advance as many teams as I would have done the same thing you did. I would have drafted in August because, for example, my DraftKings Millie, I just like slacked on and had to draft all 150 and like in the last couple days, and I drafted literally like 20 at a time on my phone, which was chaos, and like they're not that stacked, but I'm out advancing my underdog teams. Did you skew your draft late because of the side bet at all, or is this something you always do? Because me first,
a couple things there. First, I was overseas that first week that DraftKings that the BBM came out.
Yeah, just
I think if I was home, I would have done probably 15 to 20 drafts, I think, during that first 2-3 days, because there was substantial value from an ADP standpoint. After that first kind of 3 to 5 day period, I think that value was mostly gone. We were still going to see some movement across, obviously, but like the crazy value was gone. Now, thinking through where I have the most edge for a variety of reasons, information, competition, it came down to August is where I saw. And now, last year, I did a lot more of my BBM in July because I was like, August is when the normies are coming in. That's when I want to be spending all my time on DraftKings. And I think there's definitely a logic to that of like from an overall best ball portfolio. But for me personally, because I've got $70,000 in side bets on the BBM, I'm putting all my this is my primary focus. August is where I feel I have the greatest chance, greatest kind of edge. And so that's where the majority of mine were.
Yeah. And I mean, speaking for me, like I don't think I would want a side bet that made me not draft how I want to draft. And how the side bet came together is you hit me up, you're like, hey, you want to do a side bet? I was like, sure, I'll do something friendly. Because I did not draft with a side bet in mind. I drafted with how do I win $3 million? So we're not perfectly even on the process there, but let's just go through some of our fades, I guess, and leverage on each other and talk through the rest of our process. We'll do a couple of my guys. We'll get down to you too. You were out on Ramondre. I think that's a good process fade, just like concerns of the offense. I would probably have wanted a little bit more than 2%. You're out on Swift. That one's probably not as sound, but I'm sure you had your reasons. Christian Watson, again, offensive concerns. That one's good. The Stroud one is my guess is you just drafted a lot of the 2 of the mid-round guys. So like Daniel Jones, Richardson, Deshaun, Goff, like guys like that. And I have I have some zero leverage on you. Like Hardy, I have some bad leverage. Hodgins, Penny, Michael Thomas, now that he's on IR. So talk to us about some of those
Let me
players.
zoom through real quick. So Ramondre was definitely a process-wise hit of the offense, thought he was being overdrafted based off the role that we saw in the past and expected them to kind of bring in someone else. They brought in Zeke. DeAndre Swift was early on. I was very off. The last week or two is when I went heavy on Swift to play catch up, because that's when it was like, oh shit, this is actually looking like Swift may actually have the larger role.
I was similar, man. Like I didn't have enough in like the 5-5-5, and like pretty late I was like, oh shit, he's gonna like win leagues.
Christian Watson, I was just a little underweight. I just wasn't overweight him. CJ Stroud, to what you said, I just mostly had my quarterbacks by then. And
Yeah.
I think obviously what CJ Stroud has put together is phenomenal. But just for the most part, I was like, hey, I really like getting the QBs kind of before Pickett. And so the exception is if I have Lamar, Jalen Hurts, or whatever, then I got a bunch of Russell Wilson, Matthew Stafford. I was going through them today, like the guys that are at that 150, 160 and beyond, because when I'm looking at the wide receivers and running backs, the ones being drafted at 150 and the ones being drafted at 200, I didn't see much of a difference. Like I thought those are probably coin flips on who was actually going to be better, but I saw kind of increased confidence in the QB position. And so that's where I was, hey, I want to get my QB that I have confidence is going to be starting throughout the year, like Russell Wilson, Matthew Stafford, Bryce Young, and so forth. And I guess honestly, CJ Stroud could have fallen into that, but probably didn't have as many stack partners for that either. So that kind of crushed. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Stroud for me is just a combination of always, like me personally, anytime a quarterback goes in the top whatever 10 in the draft, top first round, I know they're going to be a starter. I'm going to draft that guy because they could be good. And I think it's also a byproduct of me doing a lot of elite QB teams with Josh Allen.
Do you think those are mostly 3 QB or 2 QB teams, your Strouds?
2. Okay. I think most of them are Josh Allen, Stroud, Hurts, Stroud, combos like that. Just a byproduct of me doing elite QB and waiting on it.
Yeah. And who were you stacking him with? Because that's what when I'm grabbing a later QB, I'm always trying to think of a stack. I think my lack of I don't think I had too many of the Nico Collins, Tank Dell, Dalton Schultz, like Stroud stack partners that you maybe did. So there you go. 12 helps you to say, hey, I got Nico. Let me grab Stroud.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been a Schultz guy. So some of it was Schultz, some of it. So Nico was like, this is every year I get myself in trouble with this somewhat. It's like somewhat understanding the market, but it's also like, it doesn't matter when the player's good. And it was all my Nico was when he was like 13, 14. And then he went to round 10. And I was like, well, I already have 13, 14, but it's like everything else changed. So it's okay. Dell, I was like taking in May, and then I stopped taking when he, like after that preseason game, which like probably should not have done. And maybe some of it is just with like Singletary, honestly. Like, I don't think everyone is stacked. Like some of my teams, I probably built weird where if I did punt 3 QBs, like you could get Stroud and Bryce Young to end your drafts. And so like on my teams where I tried to like punt it off and just take like the best player and then end with QB, which it's like obviously QB is going to project the best versus the skill players going there. I would hit like Stroud, Young, Sam Howell, whatever.
What's my Bryce Young? Because I feel like that's one where I was 9%.
So you chose Young, I guess, over Stroud, or maybe it wasn't conscious.
No, I did. Yeah, no, I think I did because I thought Bryce had more of a kind of rushing upside. And then the other is I was taking Bryce Young stack partners a little more often, I think. And so maybe I should have said like, hey, that's a process there where it's like, I don't feel strong enough about these two but I feel 55-45. But if I'm 55-45, I shouldn't end up as 9% and 1%. I should be more like 6 and 4 or 7 and 5 or whatever.
12 and 8. Yeah, something like that.
That's probably a process mistake that I should have as I was going through.
Yeah, and I mean, speaking to me, like the reason why I have more Stroud than Young is just because he was cheapest in the market. And I thought it was like, well, I mean, the dude went second overall, and like arguably probably has better wideouts. Some of my other guys, I guess, I only marked the buys down to 4%. Got some zeros here. OBJ, maybe the outlook looks better for, been a zero. Jalen Warren, we both have a lot of. I have a little bit more. Slayton, I think, was like just a process mistake. I talked about this previously, but it's like Darius Slayton and Devontae Parker, like there was just way too much floor discussion to me in the BBM4 streets where people were talking about cashing in usable weeks. And it's like, I think a lesson from this season is you need to swing for upside because when you hit on a Kyron, it or Puka or Achan or Mostert, whatever, like it changes your season. And Darius Slayton, frankly, does not. Now, we did not see how bad, like no one saw how bad the Giants would be, or Daniel Jones getting injured is probably part of it, but that is a takeaway for me. We both have some
we
big.
have a larger sample of work with Darius Slayton, even if it's the right opportunity, that maybe he turns in a strong year where he gets like 8 touchdowns and 700 yards,
Yeah.
but that's not becoming a league winner. Lean into the risk, lean into the variance, lean into the unknown, and take more of a Tank Dell, take more of a Jaden Reed, take more of these guys that, like, yeah, they may be a complete bust, but if they're not, you maybe have that league winner aspect.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, like that's what I was like, oh, Slayton could do 808. Like he could, and it's like maybe with Jones, but no. Mingo, it's kind of funny because you have a lot of Bryce Young, but you were out on Mingo, who it was Hayden Hurst was your big stack partner, my assumption.
But that was late. For me with the Mingo aspect, that was just a player evaluation standpoint. Didn't like him as a player. ETR was a lot higher on DJ Chark as well. I don't know if I ended up high on Chark.
So okay, so do you watch college ball? Because I don't.
No, this is more, when I say player evaluation, it's more me reading and listening to people that I feel are smarter about it. And like Daniel in chat was asking about, like, I don't know why we don't talk about player evaluation. The thing is, because our only kind of learning is we were right or we were wrong. Like very, very few people are able to kind of are able to kind of look at the results and change their process on where they may have been right or wrong. Because if you want to give me an example, like, let's use Jonathan Mingo. So from a process, he was a 2nd round wide receiver. Okay, that's a positive. Some of them hit, some didn't. He was attached to a rookie QB. Okay, maybe we shouldn't do that because that's riskier. But Tank Dell's attached to a rookie QB, so that one worked out. All right, maybe we take a look at his Whopper. Maybe we take a look at like different metrics. Like at the end of the day, we're looking at such small sample size to make a firm conclusion on that. I think like we know that at the end of the day, player evaluation and player skill and player results are the most important thing in best ball, but it's also the hardest to actually be projectable and get right going forward.
Yeah, and it takes time, something that a lot of people are not doing. Like speaking to myself, I'm thinking about watching a lot more tape next year of the college prospects because I don't watch college. I watched one game of Quentin Johnston. I did not know he was going to be a 1st round pick. I was just like, that dude is slow and not an NFL wideout. And then someone's like, that dude's going to go top 5 in the draft, which obviously he did not. But I was like, I mean, hey, maybe there's something there.
He was the best yards after catch receiver in the in college. Now, does that not translate to the NFL? Because in college, he's going against cornerbacks that are smaller and slower. And so he was able to kind of catch the ball and just run away from them. But in the NFL, everyone is faster, stronger, bigger. So like it doesn't work. In the college, we didn't think his route running was a concern because he was able to get off the line pretty quickly. He was able to kind of get enough of space on his cornerbacks. In the pros, it is one of the worst route runners we have seen. And like there's been tape on Twitter that have shown like the highlights and like
he's running bad too, right? Like that drop touchdown last week is
and even on that drop touchdown, like he didn't have explosiveness. Like why wasn't he running through it? He got separation because the guy kind of lost some balance and then he just kind of slowed down.
It's sad. But I will say though, like, I put out this tweet, like the biggest difference between Bryce Young and CJ Stroud's weaponry is frankly that, the Texans wide receivers are not only good, they're like 2 of the best in the whole league, like Nico and Dell, if you believe the ESPN analytics scores, and the Panthers are all at the bottom. Like no one's good except for Thielen. So
4.1 yards, it's horrible.
Yeah. What about the Bigsby fade?
Yeah. One other overarching thought on these wide receivers as well is, from a macro, I was drafting a lot of wide receivers, trying to pretty much get like 6 before round 8 or 9.
Same.
And so when you got to the wide receivers in rounds 10, 11, and 12, I was often just not drafting any of them. And so like that's where Nico Collins falls directly into. It's not that I was against Nico Collins, but my teams already had such strong wide receivers that was an area where I liked the quarterbacks, I liked the running backs. And so from a macro aspect, that's just how I was kind of seeing the edges in the larger kind of draft strategy. That's going to lead me to missing on some of those wide receivers that do hit. But it also, if I'm doing it correctly, means that I successfully miss on a lot of wide receivers that really just don't do anything. I catch some running backs like Brian Robinson that, maybe play their way into a strong role because of ambiguity, or it's a Charbonnet that he gets that other role. But I think that's still a right process that I want to lean on going forward, is figuring out where are the right kind of values of the right position from a macro draft stance and leaning into that.
That was a big lesson from me from BBM2, was to do more what I kind of coined hyper fragile wide receiver, aka taking a lot early and not a ton late. Now, unfortunately for me,
you took a term of hyper fragile running back, and then you coined it by switching running back and wide receiver, but keeping everything else the same.
No, hyper fragile wide receiver, where you take a lot of wide receivers early, or you take them early, and then you stop taking wideouts. So 5 wide receiver, 6 wide receiver teams. It's it's a spinoff of hyper fragile running back. But unfortunately, anytime Mike Williams or Christian Watson was there in the 4th round, I took them. So
we have a lot of Big Mike. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so Big Mike was actually a good betting on the offense. Again, I think this is a miss from a lot of people. I don't have a lot of Drake London. I don't have a lot of players from offenses I thought were going to be bad. But Christian Watson, I probably should have been more what if Jordan Love sucks? Now, he did get injured. That probably plays a role. I think, have a lot more risky picks than you. I got guys like that are drawing a lot to be pure zeros going into the season, and I knew it. Jelani Woods, Zamir White, Sean Tucker. Let's just get down to some of your guys.
So it's funny, though, because while you say you missed on those because they were risky, at the same time, I was drafting Hayden Hurst and Hunter Henry.
Because, safe guys, fair.
Yeah, and they're not. And so trying to think through that, for me, why I missed on Kyren in 18, I told you in DraftKings, I think I'm at 9% or something, is in these 18-round formats, I really wanted to get the wide receivers and running backs earlier on that I felt comfortable with, because I didn't care that much about tight end. I focused at the end on just grabbing a wide variety of tight end. It's also how I got a bunch of Trey McBride, Jake Ferguson, and such. But you were taking risks and they failed you. But what else were you going to take? You could have gone with my safe plays and they still fail you. So I don't think there's any fault with taking these risks that you said. Now, I think 7% on Jelani Woods might be a little high.
It was before he tore his hamstring, I think, though. It's also when we drafted. You were
20% on Kyren and whatever you were, and that worked out amazing. So yeah.
But the reason why I have so much Woods is because I have so much Anthony Richardson. And,
yeah, makes sense.
And so it was a stacking partner. I mean, I really do think Woods would be a really good tight end if he could play, because he's just athletic as hell. He could be doing McBride things to me. But
he's not as much as a pass catch. I mean, McBride was McBride, I don't want to steal it from Silva's bit, but he won a tight end award.
Like a Mackey Award winner.
Kind of a big Jelani's a very big guy, but I honestly think of him more as the I don't want to say Donald Parham, because even Donald Parham has shown the ability.
Yeah, I mean, because I guess, I mean, I don't know. I think I do think the lesson of the wide receivers Dell and Downs and crew is some of it is just close your eyes and take 3rd round plus picks that are not being drafted. And some of it, a lot more of it to me, is take the ones in ambiguous situations, or where it's Downs. It's we knew he was going to be slot. Now, he got benefited from the Richardson injury to me. And Dell, it's Dell, it's he's got to beat out Robert Woods, who's done, Let's get down to some of your guys where you have leverage on me, starting at the top. Some of your guys are, I mean, I don't know. It's a mixed bag here. I wouldn't say I'm missing any of these players. I would say what's hurting me is I don't have enough of Keenan, I just chose Mike Williams. That was probably bad. I don't have enough Mostert. I just chose Jeff Wilson and Achane. That's probably not great. You got a lot of Hopkins, who's seeming better now with Levis. I do not. Offensive concerns for me. I'm assuming
Devontae
you're
looks a lot more positive recently.
yeah,
People
Devontae
have,
better, but he hasn't had his bye, so you're going to be hit with that. Where it's like I had Pollard's bye.
yeah.
Rondale Moore. Talk to me about Rondale Moore.
Yeah, I mean, I just thought he was too much of a value where he was going. And the way that I'm drafting my wide receivers, as we talked about, is I've probably got 6 already. And that for me was hey, Rondale Moore is probably going to hurt my advance rate, but this is the type of player that I want in the playoffs where he's going to have a low advance rate. I believe that Kyler was going to come back, so I get that connection. I mean, I'm not going to make any conclusions based off last week's game where he had a 40-some yard touchdown on 1 target on the game. But yeah. And the Burks and Bateman that I see Ale Paul talking about. The Bateman, I was also very high.
They're both trending better, honestly. I think both will be better with
what's Burks' situation? I have no idea on that one.
I'm assuming he's going to come back and play in a week or two. So assuming he's playing. And Bateman as well.
Bateman's trending upward. I like that one. And I was very high on basically all of Baltimore pass game, like Lamar, Bateman, Flowers, Andrews. I think I've run bad. I can confidently say that I have run bad on that one. 99 points in 3 games, and Lamar gets 2 touchdowns out of that.
Yeah, well, yes, but something I said in the offseason, it's like people, when you look where pass catches we're taking guys like the Baltimore receivers over the Bills, like secondary guys, like Dalton Kincaid, who has tight end eligibility. And to me, there is no way Lamar was supporting Matt over 2 pass catchers. So you take all of them, you swing it upside, but you're drafting some zeros there. And you have to know that.
Yep. Right. Either my bet was that Bateman or Flowers and not Beckham would be the secondary alpha to Mark Andrews in that offense. Todd Monken comes in. We expect them to be more air raid offense, at least more pass, more throw heavy. And fully expected either Bateman or Flowers. And maybe it was a little ping pong aspect where in any game, each of them could have the big games. I think just the unexpected, the amount of rushing touchdowns that are not Lamar that has happened in the past, 4 games. I think it's bad variance, but there's also some, they just want to rush more often in there. I don't know, but yeah.
Yeah, it's a little, the Tony Pollard has definitely played bad, but he's also ran real bad with the Dallas defense converting as many touchdowns and not ever getting tackled in the 5. Some of the Mike Evans is strong, great leverage for you. That is just a byproduct of me taking Gabe Davis more and being a little bit worried about the offense. He's a slam dunk. Ty Chandler looks better. Interestingly, that you took Madison because your reasoning of taking not taking Tony Pollard is you didn't like that 2-3 turn combos existed, but Madison went from a 10th round pick to a 5th round pick or wherever he was. So
only for a very short period of time. If you look at the amount of drafts,
let me let my cat out real quick.
Yeah, go for it. But yeah, the Madison moved extremely quickly to where it wasn't kind of a concern of how many people were drafting him before that. And then also just because I have so many of the Vikings in general, and I'm happy to pair a running back with a quarterback that, I'm probably at about, I was 14% Justin Jefferson, probably about 10% Cousins. So happy to just make a whole bet on the Vikings offense being good.
Yeah, and it seems like you got Jacobs and Henry. Now, Jacobs was probably closer to the back end of the 3rd when you got a lot of him, my assumption is. But taking those guys over the wide receiver guys who have been disappointing, T. Higgins, what have you, has been serving you really well.
Instead of Ramondre, instead of Najee. Yeah.
It's kind of funny, why the Raiders offense, but not the Patriots offense? They both seem like they were going to be kind of bad.
Defense. We expected Raiders to have a very bad defense, so expected them to kind of just be playing a bit of catch up. But honestly, I think we saw last year Josh Jacobs and Devontae Adams were the complete Raiders offense. And
Yeah.
so we saw games in DFS where you needed Josh Jacobs, you needed Devontae Adams, and QB didn't matter. Like, it was just, those were, the offenses ran through them. And then from a Devontae standpoint, I think the market was scared off of Devontae because of the quarterback situation. My belief was, we have seen Devontae time and time again still be successful. Doesn't matter who the quarterback is. So I thought that was just a market being a little off, being off the actual value. And then Josh Jacobs was people being scared of the holdout situation. I didn't feel that was as much of a risk as it should be. So for him, he was being drafted late third. I think he should have been a late second.
Yeah, for me, I guess with Devontae, people can see, obviously, I like almost full faded him. It was, I mean, that argument ignores the fact that there's talent, there's equally talented guys in not bad situations. AJ Brown, Amon-Ra, CD Lamb, whatever. I think Garrett Wilson would have been in a good situation with Rodgers as well.
Later though, like, I mean, AJ Brown, Stephon Diggs were picks like 8 and 9, and Devontae was going like 16 or so for most.
Well, he like by the end he was, by very late August he was, but for a lot of the cycle he was right in there with them. And for me, I guess it was just being so price sensitive on the top first round, where I would have taken Adams if he was after the Barkley. So it was like Barkley ahead for me, Pollard ahead of me, all the wide receivers, Eckler, Kelsey, all them. And then I would have taken Adams ahead of, I think Jalen Waddle was like the next pick. And that is where I wanted Adams. And I just didn't, he was just not there because he was drafted a lot before those guys.
I wonder if that was early drafting. Because I definitely feel like majority of mine was in that 14 to 16 range for Devontae. But again, most of my drafting was also August.
I have a lot more Devontae in the DraftKings I did like 2 days before the season launch, just because the market put him back there.
And DraftKings, I was going far more likely to grab a wide receiver in the first and second. Yeah.
Some other good, there's a mixed bag here, right? Like there are some guys where you alluded to swinging at, like Hunter Renfrow, I would argue is in like the Slayton and Parker role of like you think you're getting a safe bet. Mitchell kind of too. I think he kind of ran bad. It's like guys like Zamir White and Mitchell, you need an injury to the starter. It is what it is, right? And if those don't occur, they don't hit.
Mitchell still could be the league. Like Mitchell still could be the league winner in week 17. We don't know. Hunter Renfrow, it's not going to be the case.
No, he needed a trade probably, but some good strong picks you have on me here are
the Jefferson one is killing me. Like,
the Jefferson Chase run out is hilarious because it's like it started the year where like Jefferson was a smash. And then it looked like Chase was going to smash. And now I think Jefferson has the edge and might even out advance rate Chase. It really depends. Where would you have ranked? Personally, I would have ranked Chase like right ahead of Devontae. If the injury to Burrow happened in the preseason, where would you have ranked Chase?
And we're going with this current, I don't even know, who's the quarterback right now?
I don't even remember his name, but yeah, he's the guy, or there's ambiguity. They could sign someone better.
Okay.
The point is you're taking a guy like Chase's talent. Yeah. And like, to me, it's like, he falls down to the back end of the first, top of the second, around those guys.
I think I would have taken him right before Waddle. I think this Jimmy G in my mind, I think was a little more of a known quality than Jake Browning. Because I think like if I'm thinking through what does the Bengals season look like with Jake Browning at QB, I think it's probably like a ton more running, a ton more slower games. Like Bengals have had a kind of decent defense. But yeah, it's similar philosophies.
Yeah, I mean, there's hopes for me that Chase gets just absolutely peppered with targets from Browning, and like that's their game plan, especially with T still banged up. But who knows? It could be bad. Brian Robinson, we kind of talked about that. Just was like when I drafted, I think, because towards the end I was not taking Gibson ever. Waddle, a lot of people were in on Waddle. I wasn't as much. I think Waddles ran bad slash. I guess the Tyreek alphaness is just like always underrated a little bit until it's not.
I think both those are
Um,
fair. Also, brutal playoff schedule for him, but that's
oh
not
yeah,
something I'd concern myself with during the regular season.
you don't think about the. Well, I mean, I do. Like, you don't think
Uh,
about the playoff schedule when you're drafting.
I think about playoff schedule from the matchups. I do not try to project which defenses are going to be really good and which ones aren't.
I'm trying to grind that micro edge. I'm gonna be wrong sometimes, but I'm gonna
I'd
be.
be curious if you have like what your preseason evaluations were for those defenses and which ones kind of were accurate and were. Or, I don't know. So it'd be interesting right now. Do we have like what can we
I
do?
wouldn't say it is me evaluating like every defense. It is me confidently picking some defenses I think are going to be bad. For example, me taking all of the Eagles running backs at 2x the field was me being confident the Cardinals are bad. Me
Yes.
taking 2x the field on Penny and Chris Carson in BBM2 was me being confident the Detroit Lions run D is bad. But
I
I
think
don't
that's
know.
easier than projecting which of the defenses are going to be very good and matchups I want to avoid.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, and I'm trying to do the easier thing. I want the guys to target because that's an easier
Right.
thing and is probably more important. But I hear your point there. Talk to me about some of your other exposures
Marquise
and
Brown is a big
where
one
you
right
feel
there.
about the process on any of them.
Yeah. Marquise, same thing with the Rondale aspect. I just felt that these Arizona wide receivers were, were being devalued too much because of the Kyler aspect and the regular season. That was one of those where,
And I was with you there.
yeah, and like that was one where I had to be like, okay, I know that like this bet that I have, there's a substantial amount that's the advance, and taking someone like Marquise Brown and Rondale Moore hurts me. But 2/3 of the bet is also ROI. And from my mind, like we're structuring this bet to be the same way that I want to draft. And that's why I was like, I still feel like, hey, this gives me the best opportunity to hit the big teams to do well in the playoffs. So I went heavy on Marquise, heavy on Rondell. Yeah.
Yeah. And funnily enough, like you're killing the leaderboard right now, where you got two teams at the top 2K, 6 teams in there. I think I only have 2 teams. I had 4, but I guess I don't anymore. So you're gonna kill the ROI by default due to, I mean, assuming things. I mean, you could run real good. You could get 1,000 team into the top 50 or something.
What really matters for the jumps is getting top 1,000 is $1,000.
Okay.
Otherwise, it's 250. Even if you like top 1,000, you really need to get like top 100 or so to really make a material change from there. Because I think even like top 500 is only like 1150, 1250, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. You got a couple injuries here that should return. Goddard. I mean, we should mention that like Mike Kyron is returning, so I probably might get a couple teams in there. We're running up on an hour. I know you said we're going an hour here. Talk to me about any other the exposures or anything else you want to say.
Yeah, I think QBs is the other big thing. Is on underdog, I was more willing to grab the elite QBs because I felt from a hit percentage of scoring wise, from a structure. And so I've got a lot of Jalen Hurts, a lot of Lamar Jackson, a lot of Josh Allen. I have very little. I think I only have 2 Patrick Mahomes teams. I was completely off him for a variety of reasons. And so,
I have one.
okay, perfect. Yeah. And so because I was overweight on, those elite QBs, those teams have done well. My other teams, I was then like, okay, I'm going to go with this range of the Cousins, of the Anthony Richardsons, of the Daniel Jones. And unfortunately, that has really hurt me. So it was funny, like when the season started, you could see like my chart of like advancing was like first place, second place, third place, and so forth. But now I've got so many more in this, like, now I think I'm like, I don't know, like this, maybe a V, but so many in that 12th, 11th, 10th, because I'm just getting zeros at QBs. And so I think it's going to be very interesting in the offseason going forward what people react to, because by the data, the advanced rates are going to show that elite QB is a must absolute thing. And I'm curious if they go up. But when you dive further, why elite QB looks so good this year is because the other beat players that are being drafted in the late second, early third have mostly busted. If you didn't go elite QB and you went with one of the, 2 or 3 later QBs, high chance that those were injured and such. So I'm still fine. Like, hey, if I can we'll see how the year is, but I feel like getting those elite QBs in the third was not a bad thing. If they move up even higher next year to like mid-second, early second, I think it might be a year I'm out on it. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, I posted on Twitter the other day about some discourse I was having where a lot of people's like takeaway from this is, oh, I need 3 QBs now because injuries occur. And it's like, I would just caution anyone to not be so results oriented to quarterback injuries, which are pretty, pretty random. And, if I had to auto draft 150 teams, what I would personally do, like what I would have done this year, is I would have put Hurts and Allen right after Diggs and AJ Brown in the rankings, and I would have put every other quarterback at like a ADP of like 400, and I would have just ensured anytime I got Diggs and AJ Brown, I was probably getting Hurts or Allen, sometimes paired Allen with AJ Brown, sometimes Allen with Diggs, or vice versa. And I would just run 150 elite quarterback teams and just be like, all right, well, the years that those guys do well or don't get hurt, I'm fine. And that's personally what I would do if I was like auto drafting 150. So I do think you can eat elite QB at the 1-2 turn, but it will be really interesting to see what the market does, especially with guys like CJ Stroud, what have you, next year.
I think CJ Stroud probably moves into that like Trevor Lawrence territory for this year.
Trevor's been such a disappointment, man.
Yeah, where Trevor was going, which I think he was going like in the fifth, sixth.
Like like the 6th, and he would fall even a lot from there.
Let's see. His finishing ADP was 63. So that is sixth round, third pick. Yeah.
He was the type of guy though where he would like frequently fall. There was like no reason to take him at the 5-6 because you could get him to pair with the wide receivers, but he's been disappointing. 6% Luke Schumacher. Look at me there. All right. All right, guys. Well, thank you for tuning in for Justin and I. Please hit the like on the video and subscribe if you enjoyed this. Please make sure to join my Discord. Link to join is below. Justin, tell the people about all the great content you got for them.
Nah, nothing too special. Just follow me on Twitter. I do have a DraftKings podcast that I put out once a week. That's more for the DFS people. That just recaps the week of cash, GPs, all that stuff. But I'm excited. 3 weeks left of the regular season.
I know, man.
Let's get to the playoffs.
How many weeks until someone's winning $3 million off of best ball?
3 weeks until someone wins, what, $500K? And then 6 weeks until $3 million.
Wow. Incredible. All right, guys. Well, good luck. If it's not one of us, we hope it's you. Peace out. Enjoy your Thanksgiving.